hiatus of several years, I think. Welcome back to Mike Drinks a Beer. This is episode number 7, 8, 9. I don't know what it was. And actually, we're going to start off with a maybe not funny story, but, well, it's just one of those situations. I had already recorded all of this. It was broken up into 3 different pieces because, like you know from previous episodes, I will record a little bit, have a little bit of the beer, come back, check in, that sort of thing. And I noticed a very a very unfortunate thing on my face as I was watching the first clip, and so that's all completely gone. Today I'm going to review the 3Floyds Lord Rear Admiral, which is their version of an ESB. This deep amber ale has a complex malt sweetness and pronounced apricot hoppiness. It is named after Admiral Lord Horatio Nelson. I'm not going to totally rehearse what I said originally in the introduction because that would take too long. But what it boils down to is I was really excited to find this. It's not a beer that I had seen before. I've been a little bit out of the loop of the beer scene, but I hadn't seen it before. And as you know, 3Floyds is very heavy in the pale ale market. And so I was really glad to see this as an offering. It's not surprising that it has a lot of that malt sweetness that you would expect out of an ESB, but it also has a dryness, a bitterness, and a hoppiness there on the backside that I think balances out really nicely. And so I'll talk about that a little bit more in the actual episode. You know, when I first poured this beer, I had this whole thing about how I used to fuss over the glass and the temperature and all that. I didn't do any of that this time, and I don't care to really do it. I got this out of the fridge right before I started to drink it, and I put it in this glass, which is a standard, what is this called, an imperial pint glass? I don't know. It's the pint glass that has a bulge at the top. And it had a really nice little head on it, which maintained pretty much throughout, which was really nice. So I wish I had a little bit more detailed introduction. Alas, it is lost. It is deleted. So we're going to try again. I will check back in here in a minute, and you'll get the review will start there. All right, let's check back in. If my image has moved a little bit, it's because I'm using one of those super low-tech setups. I won't describe how I'm holding up the camera because it's pretty ramshackle, but there it is. So if I've moved a little bit, sorry. So I sat here and worked on my email a little bit. I'm one of these people that I try to keep my work email at 0, which is something of a constant battle. Some days it's easier than others, but it's a battle. So I try to keep it at 0, answering some emails here. And just what I like to do when I'm reviewing a beer is to sort of just do so subconsciously. I think if I sit there and just kind of, you know, very seriously cogitate on this beer, first of all, it would take forever to drink. I would go crazy trying to pick apart all the little flavors that I get, you know, just sitting there staring off into space, tasting the beer. If I just drink it while I'm doing something else, what ends up happening is various flavors come through that I don't expect, I don't think about. It just happens. It's sort of like the advice that people give anyone that wants to write, which is you have to write all the time. You know, you have to revise all the time, because when things and ideas sit in your head for a while, they just your brain is working on it, whether you know it or not. And so I think a similar principle is in effect here. Not that I'm comparing drinking beer to, you know, serious artistic writing, but I think you get the point. Just kind of casually enjoying it means that you will notice different things because you're not thinking about it specifically. So that's what I did. The dryness, the hops, is really, I think at this point, has become kind of the dominant note, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't mean that it totally overpowers the sweet maltiness that's underneath. In some ways, I think it balances it out, or I have this crazy visual in my head of, you know, on one level we have the hops and the dryness, and then it's like the sweetness is holding it all up. It's giving it, it's the base to the treble of the hops. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm not artistic or musical at all, so the idea that I'm describing this in musical terms is a little absurd, but that's what occurs to me. maybe a little more sweetness as it warms up. Again, not to get too nerdy, but it keeps a little bit of a head. It keeps some foam, and that's nice, just to have a little bit of that effervescence on top. It doesn't seem flat. It doesn't seem like it's just thick sludge. That's nice. If we look at the bottle here, I believe there was an alcohol statement on it, or maybe I just read it somewhere else. I don't see it on the bottle. I think I read somewhere that this comes in at about 6.5, which off the top of my head seems a little high for a traditional ESB. That could be totally wrong. I haven't really thought about beer seriously for a while, so maybe that's wrong. But this one is a little bit higher, which, again, if you drink much 3Floyds beer, shouldn't surprise you at all. All of their beer tends to be a little bit higher on the ABV scale. If you take a nice big gulp, you really see how it's balanced between the sweetness and the dryness of the hops. And I'm sorry, I realize as I'm doing this that I'm looking at the screen next to the camera and not the camera itself. So, again, I haven't done this in a long time, so I'm trying to figure it all out again. So a big gulp gives you a nice balance between sweetness and hops, and I think it's really, really good. While I was just talking about the ABV of 3Floyd's other beers, it occurs to me that, several of 3Floyd's beers are really sort of typical for the category, and I mean that in a good way. I mean that when you are looking for a specific type of beer, you know that if you get the 3Floyd's version, it's going to be really good. So Alpha King is really emblematic of its version, and it's really, really good. It's a good standby. You can always get it. It's available at many, many shops. Typically if a store carries any sort of craft beer, and I'm getting sort of irritated with the term craft beer because it sounds so snooty, but you know what I'm referring to. If a store sells craft beer at all, chances are it's going to have Alpha King. I feel that way about Bell's Two Hearted as well. For me, if you think about the American Pale Ale category, Bell's Two Hearted is just like the poster child, and so it's so good. 3Floyd's beers are like that in a lot of ways. Zombie Dust really typifies that super citrusy IPA, and it also typifies that rare beer that people kind of go nuts for, even though, it's not end of the world special. It's good, but there's also no reason that 3Floyds couldn't make more of it. This is definitely artificial market constraint. But anyway, back to this. I don't think that they're intending this to be kind of a standard offering in terms of when people think of American takes on ESB, the Lord Rear Admiral is what comes to mind. And I don't think that because I haven't seen it around. I would imagine that they would be flooding the market if they wanted that to happen. Or maybe they do want it to happen in the long term, and this is kind of the test balloon to see if it happens. The bottle that I have, I just noticed, says that it was bottled on February 6th or 8th. I can't read that number. So I don't know how old this beer is. Like I said, I haven't seen it around, and so maybe I'm just, maybe I've been out of the loop, which very well could be. But I haven't seen it around, so I think this is a relatively new beer. And we'll see what kind of lasting power it has, or how wide it gets. Here in South Bend, we are about, how far are we from Munster? An hour and a half? An hour? I'm a terrible Hoosier. I don't know exactly where Munster is. If people that have lived in Indiana their whole lives tend to know distances between major Indiana cities. Not that Munster is major, neither is South Bend, but I should know that. So it's not that far away, and it's no surprise that we have this beer from 3Floyds here, but I don't know where it is, if you can get it as far down south as Louisville, say, or St. Louis maybe, I don't know. I just don't know what the distribution is on this beer. I think maybe I would expect from a more traditional ESB a little bit smoother drink, and that's not a ding at this beer at all. It has a little bit more bite to it, between the hops and the related higher alcohol content. It just has a little bit more bite to it. That's not a bad thing here. But this is not a beer that you would enjoy, I think. You would not enjoy just, slamming it slamming it back one after the other. That would be a bad idea anyway with the ABV, but I think that would just kind of, that would wear your palate out pretty quickly, and you might not feel great. So that is to say that this beer rewards a little bit longer drinking. This would be a decent hot weather drink. I don't know that I would sit out on the porch in 90-degree weather and reach for this immediately, but it is fairly easy. Okay, I kind of rushed what I was saying there because the phone rang and it was someone that I had to answer the phone right away. Fortunately, it's someone that I wanted to talk to. Sometimes you have those urgent phone calls that you think, ugh, this is going to be a little rough. But I was glad to take that one. So I think I said something like, this is not a super smooth drink, and then I finished up with, it's a great easy drinker, which doesn't quite make a whole lot of sense. It's smooth enough, but you're not going to be able to take these huge quaffs one after the other. It's going to reward a slower drink over time, not least because of that higher alcohol content. And that's not meant to be a moral judgment. I'm not saying that you should not drink strong beer faster. Drink however fast you want. But I know that I would get a headache if I drank this too fast. I wouldn't feel great in a little while. And this is also, my friends and I frequently talk about this. We're not very old in the grand scheme of things, but once you get out of the college age, it takes very, very few beers to not feel great the next day. I think maybe 3 is about, that's the number where the next day I wake up thinking, I could probably use a Tylenol. So, in terms of beer, I think age and what counts as getting old, that bar comes down quite a bit. Anyway, this has gone on a little bit too long, so let's wrap up. This is the 3Floyds Lord Rear Admiral. It's their take on an ESB. No surprise, the 3Floyds take on an ESB has got quite a bit of hops and quite a bit of bitterness to it, and it's really good. They have managed to balance it out really well. You have the sweetness, the maltiness on the front end. You have the hops and the bitterness on the back end. And it actually plays together pretty well. The whole time I was drinking this, I was kind of waiting for some sort of definite flavor to come out. Caramel or, some sort of nuts or something like that. I never really got that. I just got kind of that roasty flavor that you know what I'm talking about, even if it's not a super accurate descriptor. This is a really good beer. I highly recommend it. Like I said, to my eyes, it is new and it doesn't have maybe necessarily the shelf space that some of the other 3Floyds beers have. So hopefully you can find it where you are, or if not, the next time you happen to be in Munster, you should check it out. Thanks for joining me today. I hope to do some of these. Some more of these in the future. This is a really enjoyable thing for me. And so, thanks. Talk again soon.